We pick up Act 3, Scene 3 at line 167. Iago has been steadily insinuating that Cassio's relationship with Desdemona is not what it appears to be on the surface, although he has been extremely careful not to say anything so far that is an outright lie. Almost out of his wits, Othello insists that Iago tell him what he is actually thinking. But Iago remains steadfast, responding to Othello's frustration with a warning. "Oh, beware, my lord, of jealousy. It is the green-eyed monster which doth mock the meat it feeds on." Jealousy, or the suspicion that your spouse is guilty of sexual infidelity, he says, is ultimately self-defeating, as all it does is eat away at the person experiencing it. Then, being careful to speak in general terms, he introduces the idea of a cuckold, or a man who has been cheated on by his wife, that lives in bliss, who, certain of his fate, loves not his wronger. But oh, what damned minutes tells he o'er, who dotes, yet doubts, suspects, yet fondly loves. In other words, the man who knows he has been cheated on by his wife is able to live happily because he no longer loves her. In contrast, the man who only suspects her of infidelity and is therefore still in love with her leads a tormented existence. At the time Shakespeare was writing, there was an obsession with cuckolds, and they often appeared in ballads, pamphlets and plays, depicted with ram's horns. Public exposure of a man as a cuckold would lead to him becoming a laughingstock, ridiculed for his ignorance, not only of his wife's infidelity, but also of these horns sprouting from his forehead. Othello's exclamation, "Oh, misery," indicates the depths of despair to which he is already sunk, and Iago makes the most of this vulnerability to ram his point further home. Poor and content is rich, and rich enough, but riches fineless is as poor as winter to him that ever fears to be poor. In other words, it is better to be poor and happy because your wealth comes from knowing you have nothing to lose, than to have infinite wealth and be miserable, which just makes you poor because you fear losing everything. Othello strikes back at Iago's insinuations, asserting that he has no intention of making a life of jealousy, where he would be seized by fresh suspicions each time the moon waxed and waned. No, he declares, to be once in doubt is once to be resolved. Exchange me for a goat when I shall turn the business of my soul to such ex-supplicate and blown surmises matching your inference. In other words, if he has any doubt, he will seek to settle it once and for all. It would only be a cuckold, known by the ram's horns sprouting from his forehead, hence the reference to a goat here, if he allowed himself to live tormented by the foul and rotten thoughts that would result from what Iago is implying. He continues to justify his position by declaring that the fact that Desdemona is fair, feeds well, loves company, is free of speech, sings, plays and dances well, is not sufficient grounds either for suspicion or to make him jealous. In the same way that her virtues are not enough, neither are his own perceived failings, as she knew exactly who she was marrying. Nor from mine own weak merits will I draw the smallest fear or doubt of her revolt, for she had eyes and chose me. It's interesting to ask ourselves for a moment if Othello is trying to persuade Iago of this, or himself. Note that Othello is specifically referring to his physical appearance, i.e. his race here, and his belief in his lack of physical attraction because of it. He appears to have internalized the prejudice he suffers to such an extent that even he has come to accept that this makes him somehow inferior. He finishes his speech with the resolution, "No, Iago, I'll see before I doubt. When I doubt, prove. And on the proof there is no more but this. Away at once with love or jealousy. Iago professes to be glad to hear that Othello is not jumping to conclusions and is taking such a measured approach, as this now enables him to be much more open about what he's actually thinking. I am glad for this, for now I shall have reason to show the love and duty that I bear you with franker spirit. He assures him that I speak not yet of proof, but urges Othello to watch his wife very closely when she is with Cassio, through neutral eyes that are not jealous nor secure, knowing full well that he has made it impossible for Othello to do just that. He maintains that he is only saying all of this because he doesn't want Othello's generosity of spirit to be abused, and that he knows the deceitful character of his countrywomen only too well. In Venice they do let God see the pranks they dare not show their husbands. Their best conscience is not to leave it undone, but keep it unknown. Is that really true? Asks Othello. Well, says Iago, you can't deny that Desdemona does have form on the old deception front. She did deceive her father, marrying you, and when she seemed to shake and fear your looks, she loved them most. That she did, agrees Othello. Well, there you go then, responds Iago. She that so young could give out such a seeming to seal her father's eyes up close as oak he thought was witchcraft. In other words, she was able to exploit the innocence that her youth gives off to such an extent that she was able to blind her father, closing his eyes as tightly as the grain on a piece of oak, so that he was persuaded that her subsequent actions to run off with Othello could only have been down to black magic and not free will. He finishes once more by professing that it is all his fault for having brought it up in the first place, although he obsequiously reassures him that it has only come from a place of love. But I am much to blame. I humbly do beseech you of your pardon for too much loving you. Othello responds as Iago knew he would. I am bound or indebted to thee for ever. Iago now pretends to be concerned that Othello appears to be upset by what he has heard. Even though Othello denies it, Iago refuses to accept his assurance and, using reverse psychology, begs him neither to misinterpret what he has told him nor to jump to any firm conclusions, knowing that this will make him do both. I am to pray you not to strain my speech to grosser issues, nor to larger reach than to suspicion. He warns him that, should you do so, my lord, my speech should fall into such vile success as my thoughts aimed not at. Cassio is my worthy friend. In other words, if he does, then his words will have had a truly dreadful result that he didn't intend them to have at all, because Cassio is a good friend of his. Othello once more denies that he is upset and declares his belief in Desdemona's virtue. I do not think but Desdemona's honest. That's the spirit, exclaims Iago, subtly undermining Othello's resolve to trust his wife. Long live she so, and long live you to think so. Yet again, Iago the puppet master has pulled Othello's strings and he is dancing to his tune, as he quickly switches back to doubting Desdemona because of his own perceived otherness and how she has gone against nature by choosing someone like him. And yet how nature, erring from itself. Note how Iago now has the confidence to interrupt Othello, his commanding officer, in order to hijack his train of thought, to put words into his mouth. Because Othello has said it first, it now gives him license to agree and really rub it in. Aye, there's the point, as to be bold with you, not to affect many proposed matches of her own clime, complexion and degree, whereto we see in all things nature tends. Foh, one may smell in such a will most rank, foul disproportion, thoughts unnatural. In other words, rejecting suitors from her own country, of her own race and of her own rank, which goes against what we see naturally occur, smacks of a person with an obnoxious disposition, filthy impropriety and abnormal thoughts. However, he says, quickly backpedaling, he's not specifically speaking of her, just someone like her, although he wouldn't be surprised if, in the cold light of day, she thinks better of her choice, compares him with the appearances of her countrymen, and feels sorry for what she has done. Her will, recoiling to her better judgment, may fall to match you with her country forms, and happily repent. Note that the adverb happily here doesn't mean joyfully as it would now, but instead means perhaps. Othello dismisses Iago, urging him not only to tell him if he sees anything else, but also to set Emilia to the task of spying on Desdemona. Left alone, Othello reveals that he is a soul in torment, regretting his decision to marry, as he believes that what Iago has told him is only the tip of the iceberg. Why did I marry? This honest creature doubtless sees and knows more, much more, than he unfolds. Iago, however, has not finished with him yet, and he returns to implore him not to brood over the matter any further. Yeah, right. He has a cunning plan that should make both Cassio and Desdemona show their true colours. He urges him to hold off from reinstating Cassio, even though, for sure, he fills it, i.e. the position, up with great ability, arguing that by holding him off a while you shall by that perceive him and his means. In other words, Othello will be able to observe Cassio's modus operandi. Not only this, but he should note if your lady strain his entertainment with any strong or vehement importunity. Much will be seen in that. Desdemona is seen to be pleading strongly for him to get his job back. That will be extremely telling, he says. Apparently racked with guilt, he finishes his speech by once more urging Othello to think of what he said merely as the thoughts of an interfering busybody who doesn't know what they're talking about, and therefore to think of Desdemona as innocent, at least for the time being. In the meantime, let me be thought too busy in my fears, as worthy cause I have to fear I am, and hold her free, I do beseech your honour. Othello reassures Iago that he need not fear his self-control, and Iago once more takes his leave, no doubt smugly congratulating himself on his progress. Once more left alone, Othello, in a brief soliloquy, muses on Iago's exceeding honesty and, ironically, his deep understanding of human nature. He is, he says, a man who knows all qualities with a learned spirit of human dealings. Of course, what he doesn't realise is that Iago is using this very skill that he is impressed by to manipulate him. Employing falconry imagery, he resolves to cut his ties with Desdemona and cast her off to fend for herself if she proves wild and untrainable, i.e. unfaithful, even though to do so would be a cut to his own heart. If I do prove her haggard, though that her jesses were my dear heartstrings, I'd whistle her off and let her down the wind to prey at fortune. He returns to what is clearly niggling at him, his different race, and how he feels that this has put him at a disadvantage to make him less attractive than the Venetian nobility to which Desdemona is accustomed. Haply, for I am black, and have not those soft parts of conversation that chamberers have. It's interesting to observe how Othello's self-confidence has taken a nosedive in the space of only about 170 lines. Note how he blames his race for his perceived lack of skill in speech, and how this is completely different to Act 1, Scene 3, when he declared, "Rude am I in my speech, and little blessed with the soft phrase of peace," and then proceeded to confidently give a speech of astounding eloquence that even won over the Duke of Venice. He also wonders if it is because he is older, or for I am declined into the vale of years, although he immediately rejects this, yet that's not much. I'm not that much older, he says. No, he concludes, she's gone, I am abused or deceived, and my relief must be to loathe her. Note how he's completely gone against what he swore he would need, i.e. proof, to summarily declare her guilty without any evidence at all. He bemoans the way marriage nominally allows a man to possess a woman, while she retains complete ownership of her appetite or her sexual desire. He would rather, he says, be a toad and live upon the vapour of a dungeon than keep a corner in the thing I love for others' uses. He has no intention of sharing her with any other man. He finishes his speech by blaming fate for making men cuckolds as soon as they are conceived. "'Tis destiny unshunnable, like death. Even then this forked plague is fated to us when we do quicken." His musings are interrupted by the entrance of Desdemona and Emilia, the sight of his wife making him change his mind yet again. "If she be false, oh, then heaven mocks itself. I'll not believe it." Desdemona, blissfully unaware of what has been going down, has arrived to tell him that the guests he has invited to dinner are waiting for him. But she becomes alarmed, fearing that he may be ill, when Othello responds in an uncustomarily weak voice. He tells her that he has a pain upon my forehead here. As I mentioned earlier, cuckolds, or men whose wives had been unfaithful to them, were widely depicted at the time with ram's horns sprouting from their foreheads, and it is to this that Othello is somewhat cryptically referring. Poor Desdemona, however, who is completely innocent and is not remotely suspicious, takes what he says at face value, putting his discomfort down to the fact that he hasn't been sleeping properly. "Faith, that's with watching. 'Twill away again. Let me but bind it hard. Within this hour it will be well." And she attempts to bandage his head with her handkerchief. Othello is in no mood for Desdemona's attempts to be a nursemaid, and he pushes the handkerchief away from him and back towards her, claiming that it is not big enough. During this exchange, Desdemona fatefully drops it on the floor, and the pair leave, leaving Emilia alone. Emilia picks up the handkerchief, glad that she has found it, as this was her first remembrance or love token from the moor. We find out, however, that Iago, her wayward or unpredictable husband, hath 100 times wooed me to steal it. She reveals that the handkerchief is of great importance to both Desdemona and Othello. She so loves the token, for he conjured her she should ever keep it, that she reserves it evermore about her to kiss and talk to. She resolves to have the pattern of the embroidery on it, which we later find out to be strawberries, copied, so that she can give it to Iago, although she has absolutely no idea what he intends to do with it. This is important, as we realise that Emilia, who arguably should know Iago the best out of everyone, is just as taken in by him as everyone else, and that she is in no way complicit in Iago's villainous plot. Iago enters, and it's interesting to observe the dynamic between them when they are alone. Iago is just as contemptuous of her as he was in Act 2, Scene 1, rudely demanding what she is up to. "How now? What do you here alone?" Emilia attempts to flirt with him, her words containing a double entendre. "Do not you chide. I have a thing for you." She is clearly referring to the handkerchief, but the word "thing" was also contemporary slang for female genitalia, so it appears that she is trying to create a bit of a sexual frisson between them. Iago, however, is not remotely interested, and picking up on her flirty innuendo, he somewhat snidely and disdainfully responds, "You have a thing for me? 'Tis a common thing." In other words, it is open to all, as he seems to imply that she is promiscuous. When Emilia interrupts him, he skillfully finishes the sentence with, "to have a foolish wife," to change its intended sense, so that Emilia dismisses her correct suspicion that he is being incredibly insulting. "Oh," she says, relieved, "is that all?" and changes the subject back to the handkerchief. "What will you give me now for that same handkerchief?" It appears that Iago has been on at her for some time to steal it, something that she tells him she hasn't done when he asks her how she has come by it. She let it drop by negligence, and to the advantage I, being here, took it up. Note how Iago quickly turns on the charm to try to get it from her. "A good wench. Give it me." Emilia, however, doesn't just want to turn it over without knowing what he wants it for. What will you do with it that you have been so earnest to have me filch it? Iago is too quick for her and snatches it, the charm turned back off like a tap, as he tells her to mind her own business. Emilia pleads with him to give it back if it isn't something really important he wants it for, as, poor lady, she'll run mad when she shall lack it. Iago merely tells her to deny knowing anything about it before unceremoniously getting rid of her. Be not act known on it. I have use for it. Go, leave me. Why on earth does Emilia give Iago the handkerchief in the first place? She has already acknowledged that it is of great sentimental value to Desdemona, as it was the first love token Othello gave her. And we know that she is certainly not Iago's accomplice. So her intentions are not bad. The key seems to lie in their own fraught marital relationship. Emilia has suffered Iago's insults about her failings as a wife in public, against which she has defended herself by saying that she has given him no just cause to speak about her in that way. In private, he seems equally as disdainful of her. It would appear that Emilia, totally ignorant of Iago's villainous streak and his murderous intentions, is just desperate to get into his good books and hopes that this gesture might make him show a little bit of love towards her. It's also not inconceivable that she is hoping that he only wants to borrow the handkerchief to have the pattern of the embroidery copied, so that he can have one the same made for her as a love token. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments section below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more videos on English language topics and exam techniques, and English literature texts.